So when I was 7, I remember writing a story, sitting in a train with my parents, going to my home village. And this story is about two adults' conversations between their observations about human life, the meaning of life. And that was my first attempt of writing something about the meaning of life in a philosophical perspective. And since then, the thought of thinking deeply about something, sometimes people call it brooding about something, but it's about thinking deeply about something which really is serious. And that gives us a feeling of how we can think deeper, think richer about life. And then the fiction got into my head. Traveling and transporting ourselves to the characters' lives, about what authors wrote about, imaginative journeys about their lives, about their characters' lives. And that's really like taking us to a very different level of dimension, unlike philosophy. So fiction was a long time a big companion for me. And writing is like a pilgrimage to the self, and it really heals me. I read somewhere that writing a journal every day, about gratitude, about the way we think, about some of the observations we do, what we see in our life, really helps us to see how things are, and that clearly expresses how do we look at the world, and that forms the worldviews. So writing actually forms worldviews. The conscious mind deals with the knowledge, whereas the subconscious mind actually do the action. So when we do the writing, the subconscious mind works on what you already acquired, what you already seen, the worldviews come into there, and that heals you and that liberates you. So in that process, I found out that we should write every day as a matter of invoking our subconscious mind to see what there is. And for that matter, the exercise is very simple, and if you don't have much of time, what I did was like to write briefly, maybe like a tweet, or if you have more time and if you want to elaborate on the idea of the tweet, you can write a blog, or you can write an email to your friend about something, an idea, and maybe seek his feedback, or maybe like a validation. So writing should be a daily process, and that's how I enjoyed it, and that's how the book happened. And when you write every day and you stack it up over a period of time, you see yourself in there, and that's where the compounding happens. So it's been almost 4 or 5 years I've been writing on a tweet, a blog, or an email, or a Quora answer, or a LinkedIn post, and then you see these bits and pieces coming together as like how you look at the world, and what you call as the mental model of the writer, which gets shaped over a period of time. That's where the magic happens. So if you want to write, I think you should write every day, bits and pieces, and then you see yourself in it, and then you see like how you can shape. You can shape it to a book, or a construct of what you really mean. So my new book, Between Genes and Memes, is actually a collection of thought experiments. It's like a thought lab where different ideas come together, and we try to experiment with combining two ideas and making it bigger. So it's like a science lab where different elements coming together, and we get an absolutely new thing out of it, right? It could be words, it could be ideas, it could be different worldviews coming together without being very judgmental about whether it is good or bad. So the idea of intelligence is to entertain a thought without accepting it, right? So this is what the book is collectively trying to achieve, because the kind of work which I've been doing almost like last 12-15 years with leaders, with people, with skilled experts, and different kinds of thought points have actually triggered my imagination to come up with looking at problems, looking at things in a different perspective, and that has helped me to build an overall new kind of worldview. And this book is about celebrating those ideas, not by being trying to conclude whether it is good or bad. We are living in a world where we are constantly influenced by many things, including the media. Every day, like the news feeds, the notifications, the recommendations, what people talk about current events, articles, blogs, and we read more nowadays. Like every day we are watching films. I mean, it's such information coming from different places. And how do we figure out like what is real and what is not? And this is where the biggest challenge right now. So we are the most knowledgeable, most informed set of people living right now, but we are not able to understand how these things need to come in together, to make sense out of it. To make a sense out of this world is one of the most difficult things. So that's why we need more critical thinking exercises, thought experiments, not concluding things faster, not getting into snap judgments, and figuring out what really is there for us. So when I said critical thinking, it is actually deriving wisdom out of collective knowledge, and that requires a lot of effort to analyze things, not to just consume things as it is. So and that requires a lot of effort when it comes to analyzing things. I've been working as a manager, as a leader with people, and it's like spending a lot of time with people, talking to them, understanding their emotions and their priorities. And when it comes to writing a book, and that it's a very individualistic process. I have to spend time with myself, waking up in the morning and staying late at night, and it is like an introvert's job. Being working with people is like fun, but working with ourselves is like a very, very deep process where, and that is the process which I really enjoyed in doing this. So book writing is like an introvert's job, working with yourself, and brutally refining the book. And whatever we wrote, sometimes it's very embarrassing to read it again. Sometimes we delete it immediately. And some pieces of what we wrote surprise us, and then we use that to see whether it excites people, it resonates with people. So the process of writing has been the most painful, at the same time the most enjoyable process, because I was able to spend a lot of time with myself. And I think there is an opportunity for everyone to do that. So in this book, I take examples of creative people who use mindfulness to achieve deep work. When I say deep work is outcome which probably you will not achieve without discovering yourself. I remember a story in 1665 when the Cambridge University was closed for almost 2 years because of the plague. The student there was Isaac Newton, and he had to go back to his village because the college was closed, and he almost spent 2 years with himself. And as a result, he created the laws of the motion and the calculus. And this is which led the scientific world for a long period of time, and even now we do that. So it is that time of deep work which brings out the magical results from people, be it a musician, be it a scientist, be it a creative ad filmmaker. The best ideas come to you when you access the genius, and that too when you are in the solitude, and that I think we should all access that. We should all find time for ourselves to access our genius. I'm not saying that working with people will not help you to get the genius out of you, but the point is to focus on something deeply so that you access it. So when you access it, you're able to bring out the best results from you. I've always been passionate about reading philosophy. From the Plato to the new generation philosophers. And unlike the earlier stage of philosophy, and now the philosophy is rich with different subjects, like for example psychology, human psychology, evolutionary biology. We have new sorts of human behavior coming out of because of the internet explosion. So it's interesting to see the new things in a philosophical perspective, unlike the philosophy which we read earlier, like the Marcus Aurelius or the Plato or the Aristotle, or the series of European philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche or Immanuel Kant. And so if you just Google the philosophers, you would see dozens of philosophers who came out with some extremely interesting thoughts about human life. and combining it with science is amazing. That's what's happening right now. So the kind of philosophers which we can follow is that the people who already are philosophers have a philosophical perspective, but they combine science and the modern ways of looking at life, and that is more exciting. And that is the reason for me to read many things. One of the guys who really surprised me is the guy behind the School of Life, Alan D. Bottom, and he comes out with very beautiful arguments about human relationships, about the way we look at life. So I think philosophy is for everyone. It's about deriving wisdom from critical thinking, and it is not something which we earlier thought about, like thinking too much for nothing. So that myth of philosophy, from thinking too much for nothing to thinking critically to come out with some really interesting worldviews. So that is where we are now.